Am I the asshole for getting my boss fired and ruining his career after he fired me from a company I created?
Am I the asshole for getting my boss fired and ruining his career after he fired me from the very company I created? I know how that sounds, but stick with me, because the details here are everything. So, let's rewind about 10 years. I was in my early 20s, full of energy and what I thought was a brilliant idea for a tech startup. I poured everything I had into it, my savings, my time, countless sleepless nights. For the first 3 years, it was just me and a laptop in my tiny apartment. I built the company from the ground up, brick by digital brick. It was my baby. As we started to grow, I knew I couldn't do it all alone. I needed to bring in people who were smarter than me in areas where I was weak. That's when I met Mark. Mark was a seasoned executive with a fantastic resume. He was charming, sharp, and seemed to understand my vision perfectly. I hired him as my chief operating officer, and for a while it was a dream partnership. He handled the day-to-day operations, freeing me up to focus on innovation and the big picture strategy. The company flourished under our combined leadership. We were unstoppable. A few years into this, my personal life started to change. I met my now wife and we started talking about having a family. The 80-hour work weeks that I had been pulling for years just weren't sustainable anymore. I wanted to be a present husband and father. I didn't want to miss the first steps or the school plays. So, I made a major decision. I decided to step down as CEO. It wasn't an easy choice, but it felt like the right one for my life. I had a long talk with the board and with Mark. I proposed that Mark take over as CEO. He had earned it, and I trusted him to steer the ship. My plan was to transition into a Chief Innovation Officer role. It was still a senior position, but it was project-based and offered more flexibility. I could work from home more, set my own hours to a degree, and finally have a semblance of work-life balance. I would still be a major shareholder and on the board, so I felt my creation was in safe hands. Everyone agreed. Mark was thrilled. The board supported the transition, and for the first year it worked beautifully. I loved my new role. I was creative, productive, and I was home for dinner every night. Mark seemed to be doing a great job as CEO. The company's profits were up, and morale seemed high, or so I thought. The shift was subtle at first. My projects started getting deprioritized. Budgets for my department were quietly trimmed. When I'd bring up new ideas in board meetings, Mark would publicly praise them but then privately tell me they weren't a good fit for the current company direction. He started referring to the company as my company in interviews, barely ever mentioning my role as the founder. It stung, but I tried to be professional. I told myself he was just trying to establish his own authority as the new leader. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. The real trouble started about 2 years after he became CEO. He began hiring his own people, friends and former colleagues, into key positions. My team, the original innovators who had been with me since the early days, started getting pushed out. They'd come to me, confused and hurt, telling me their roles were being made redundant or they were being put on impossible performance improvement plans. I tried to advocate for them, but Mark would just give me a polished corporate answer about restructuring for efficiency. The company culture I had built, one of collaboration and creativity, was being replaced by a culture of fear and cutthroat politics. It was heartbreaking to watch. I was still a board member and a significant shareholder, so I raised my concerns at board meetings. I presented evidence of the declining morale and the loss of key talent. But Mark was a master manipulator. He would twist the numbers and charm the other board members, painting me as a disgruntled founder who couldn't let go of the past. He made me look like I was the problem. The final straw came on a Tuesday morning. I got a calendar invite for a meeting with Mark and the head of HR. I walked in and the air was ice-cold. Mark, without even a shred of empathy in his eyes, told me that my position as Chief Innovation Officer was being eliminated. He said the company was moving in a direction that no longer required my specific skill set. He was firing me from the company I built. He said I could keep my shares and my seat on the board, but my employment was terminated, effective immediately. I was escorted out of the building I had basically built, with my belongings in a cardboard box. I was utterly humiliated and furious. For a week, I was in a daze. But then, the anger turned into determination. He might have been the CEO, but I was still the founder and a major shareholder. He had underestimated me. I knew the company's bylaws inside and out because I had helped write them. I knew every contract we had ever signed. He thought he had won, but he had just started a war he wasn't prepared for. I lawyered up. I didn't just get any lawyer. I hired the best and most ruthless corporate litigation team in the city. I told them to spare no expense. We started digging. My legal team began a formal discovery process, demanding access to every email, every internal memo, every financial record from Mark's tenure as CEO, and what we found was staggering. It turned out Mark wasn't just a bad manager. He was actively mismanaging company funds. He was using the company expense account for lavish personal vacations, luxury cars, and expensive gifts, all disguised as client entertainment. He had hired his unqualified brother-in-law for a 6-figure salary in a nacho marketing job. He had made side deals that benefited his friends' companies at the expense of our own. He had covered it all up with slick accounting tricks. He wasn't just firing me to get me out of the way. He was firing me to stop me from discovering what he was doing. I had a choice. I could have just taken this information and forced a quiet resignation, but he had humiliated me. He had destroyed the culture I built and hurt people I cared about. I wanted justice, not just for me, but for them. So, I didn't go for a quiet exit. I called a special emergency meeting of the board. My lawyers and I laid out a mountain of irrefutable evidence. We presented a 200-page dossier detailing every single one of his transgressions, complete with bank statements, emails, and sworn affidavits from former employees. The board was in shock. The man they had trusted, the charming leader, was a fraud. The vote was unanimous. Mark was fired for cause, effective immediately, but I wasn't done. The for-cause termination meant he lost his golden parachute, his stock options, everything. We then filed a civil lawsuit against him to recoup the millions he had misappropriated from the company. The lawsuit became public. His name and face were all over the financial news, branded as a corrupt executive. His career was, for all intents and purposes, over. No reputable company would touch him after a scandal like that. He lost his house, his reputation, and his future. My wife says I went too far, that I should have just let it go after he was fired. She thinks I became obsessed with revenge. Some of my friends agree, saying I destroyed a man's life, even if he did wrong me. But my former employees, who he pushed out, have thanked me. The company is now being led by an interim CEO, and we're slowly rebuilding the culture he destroyed. I'm back, more involved than ever, trying to put the pieces back together. So, I have to ask, am I the asshole for not just getting him fired, but for systematically dismantling his entire career? Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you like stories like this, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. I'll see you in the next one.